Hello, and welcome to this special program from Kavita, Ireland. We've got a special person today who has written a beautiful book that takes her from a journey of inner discovery and takes her to a place where she finds herself. This is a story of a girl who's going through a tough time in her life. She is suffering in many ways, and then she goes to India to practice yoga, find her inner self, and she discovers the light. So the story is a very positive story. The story is about going from darkness to light. And I want to mention a proverb from Vedas that says Tamso ma jyotirgamaya. What it means is that take me from darkness to the light. So essentially, in one sentence, that is the essence of this beautiful book. And I came across the book. It merges two or three storylines so beautifully, which I will come over and we'll talk about in the course of the program so beautifully that I was stuck. And I thought that I need to find out who has written the book, talk about the book, and share this beautiful experience through the book and her journey to all of you. So, in this special program, I want to welcome you all, and I also want to welcome the author of the book that we mentioned. It's called Middle Distance, and the author is called Heather Gartside. And I have with me Heather from Denmark today. Hello, Heather, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and for reading the book.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Thanks for writing the book, I must say.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you come into? I know you're a photographer as well. After talking to you, you're multi-talented. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the book and talk about the storyline and your protagonist and the pictures, beautiful pictures in there. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
That's a big question. Well, as you can hear from my accent, I'm not Danish. I'm British. I was born in the west of England, and I've lived abroad since 1990. I first moved to Paris, where I worked as a designer. I was working for the French fashion company Louis Vuitton, and
Wow.
I travelled around the world talking about handbags. I was working in the merchandising department, and I was responsible for the image. But there's a story by the famous Hans Christian Andersen, who's the most famous Dane, I think, in history. Who he wrote a story called "The Emperor's New Clothes," and it was about a vain king who he was gullible. He believed what he was told, and he was told by two con men that he looked fantastic in some robes and clothes that these con men had woven for him, the cloth. But in actual fact, it was a pack of lies. And but the king, in order not to look stupid, agreed with the con men, and he convinced all his courtiers and the nobles and the rich people in the town that it was true, that he wasn't actually completely naked. He was actually clothed in the most sumptuous robes, and if people couldn't see these sumptuous robes, then they were stupid, basically. And I felt like the little boy when I was working with Louis Vuitton in the story, who was watching the king walk down a long promenade completely naked, and everybody was cheering for the gorgeous clothes because they didn't wish to appear stupid. But this little boy had the honesty and the foresight to start laughing and pointing at the king and saying, "He's naked." And for me, my experience of Louis Vuitton, it was all a bit ridiculous. It wasn't the place for me. I didn't see the value in handbags as making a one iota of difference to the state of the world that we live in. So I kept notes. I watched. I thought a lot about it, and eventually met myself a Danish professor on a train. And we moved to and lived in Norway, where we started a family. It was so wonderful to escape that crazy circus. And then, yeah, and then we travelled around the world for many years and ended up in Denmark for 20 years now.
Tell us, how did you get into photography and writing? Is it something you were born with, or you acquired?
Yes. I'm a quiet person, and I do like solitude. I grew up in the countryside, in the, the the borders of England and Wales, and it was always about the landscape. I draw and I paint and I sculpt and photography. These are my main things, and of course, writing. That was always there, but it came out in later years as something that I really wish to spend my time doing, and it still is.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
So, how did you? So, is this your first book? Middle.
No, no, there was Life is a Journey, and my first book was this one. It's called Rice Pudding in a Duvet,
Uh,
and it's a warning to a mother to her teenage daughter as she's just about to leave home about how not to do the things that her mother's done.
mhm.
Of course, the daughter won't listen because, but the mother tries, and it's a love letter from a mother to a child, and
Right.
it's a crazy title, Rice Pudding in a Duvet, but all the chapters are taken from I'm a cook as well. I've taken from recipes. There isn't an Indian recipe in there yet because this was
Mhm.
published first in 2013, and I hadn't been to India at that point. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a jaunt around the world. It's using recipes as a device to give titles for the mother to reminisce and tell some sort of shocking tale or sweet tale or meaningful tale.
Very
So
good.
yes.
Very good. So okay. So let's come to the when you talk about the title, the rice pudding. We have got this title, middle distance. So you
Yes.
seem to be picking very peculiar titles. So what does this title? How did you settle on this? And what does it signify?
Well, yes. Well, I attended a art college as when I was younger, so you get a thorough art education and a knowledge of painting techniques and art history. And the middle distance is the area in a painting. Well, you can see it in this big image on the screen now. How it's there's the foreground. I
Yeah.
think in the image we can see at the moment that will be middle distance,
Yeah.
and the the background, which you can probably see, it's like a little monolith in the distance. The middle
Mhm.
distance, often a painter would make that a little fuzzier. It's something you can't quite focus on. It's not.
Yeah.
it's not sharp, it's undefined. And for me, in writing the middle distance, it's the mystical part of the psyche that is begins to be examined in this book as part of the journey of this lady to India and back to the light.
So mystical seems to be the theme, right? Mystical seems to be the theme. And I read the book. I was quite, I mean, I think it requires maybe 2, 3 readings to understand it fully, to be honest. Right. And what I would say is that there is like a couple of themes, layers upon layers of themes going on. So what I found, that there's a storyline. So there's a protagonist, she's going through her life, but then there is another storyline which is living to the life of a royal family, Danish royal family, Catherine Matilda. So she is also experiencing that life. And then we've got a theme of yoga going all over the chapter. So there's you're talking about different yogasanas, which is the poses, the yoga poses. And then you have a very beautiful photo theme going on as well. And all of it is in black and white, which kind of represents something as well. I will let you talk about that. But what about these 3 or 4 themes that are going on? Is there any I missed? And are they interwoven? Do they mean something in the way they are threaded together? I would be very interested to find out.
Yeah, I think what you have to think of as the main theme, perhaps in this novel, is shock, horror, post-traumatic stress disorder. These seemingly disparate themes, they're kind of like littered photographs. This also accounts for the black and white illustrations in the book. When I took these photographs, they were all in glorious colour, in full Kodachrome. But the theme of the book, it's a somber theme. The colour has been leached out of everything by this poor lady's
Circumstances.
breakdown. I think we could say, which she's walking through. It's this desolate landscape, and the only thing that's pulling it together is her yoga, and the yoga mat that was permanently by her bed, the meditation, the quest to be more, to feel, to wish to feel the love of a mother, which actually turns out to be the cosmos, of finding her way towards it, to this something much better than this desolate place that she finds herself in. It's like a helping hand out of it, which is this golden stream that goes through the book, like a river.
Yeah.
And the historical side, I think that relates to the state of, in her kind of mental imbalance. She's receptive to atmospheres, to we'll go back to that word, mystical again. She's drawn to this place near to where she lives, where grand things happened in the 18th century. It's a true story about she was originally a British princess, sister of George III, who was betrothed to a young king when she was 15. He was in his mid-20s, but he wasn't very well. He was schizophrenic. He'd had a terrible childhood, and she found herself in the arms of a broken, twisted, perverse, ultimately tragic young man who treated her very badly, and she. Oh, this is a huge subject. But she found comfort in the arms of her doctor.
I see.
And there's another connection there in the story. I mustn't spoil the story, but there is a modern day doctor who surfaces in the book,
Yeah.
who is as equally manipulative as the German doctor who kind of made out that he was in love with this very vulnerable young girl.
Mm-hmm.
But he was more interested in power. He ended up being the de facto ruler of Denmark for several years until he was ousted and grotesquely executed. And it was there's a great shame in Denmark about this episode.
I see.
But you can in this place where the novel's set, it's all these alleyways.
Yeah.
There's no palace there anymore, but there's still the remnants of the formal gardens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These 250-year-old chestnut trees that are all clipped, and there's a snap in the air. There's ghosts, and the protagonist makes a connection with these this sense of loss in the air. Gosh, this is a long answer. I think we better get another question, Abby.
No, I think the question was longer, and the yoga theme, right? So there's a yoga theme going as well, right? So you started from the first chapter. I think there's 32 chapters. You're going through all of them with a yoga asana. Now, is
Yeah.
there anything in there? Is there a theme in there, or they are just basically the yogas that she is practicing to come out of this a dark place she has gone in?
Yeah, I think you'll find when you read the book that each chapter is it has some the anglicized names which are in the beginning of the book of the asanas. They relate to what's happening in the chapter. For instance, I've just flicked to chapter 13. It's King Pigeon Pose. So she begins the chapter doing this exercise, and then the exercise merges into the latest happening in her life. This is relating to this park again, to the feeling of being observed. Something strange. She makes a connection with these mystical, ghostly feelings.
Yeah.
And so with the yoga in that way. When she gets to India, the asanas take on the Sanskrit names then.
Okay. That's very good. And what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to try and show. So the third theme that I found was very peculiar was your pictures. So what I'm trying to do is to show some of the pictures to the audience and appreciate the photography and the theme that you've captured in your book. So let's see if I can do it. Okay.
Oh, you did it. Abby has a brand new MacBook, so he's struggling, but he's.
So yeah. So there's many pictures that we can see that you have captured in the book, which are, where have you, first of all, what's the theme in there? Is there a theme in there? Where have you got them from? And is there a I don't know how to say, is it related to the storyline
Yeah,
by
yeah. Well, the picture that you just saw, that was most of the pictures. I think about 80% of the pictures are actually taken in Denmark, around the area where I live, just north of Copenhagen, and on the north coast of the Zealand, which is the largest island in Denmark. This shall I point to the picture that we're seeing now, Abby?
Please do. Yes.
This is well, we live in unlike India, this is a cold country, a dark country. This is a country where we can probably be out of our houses for about 6 months of the year, and the rest we have to stay indoors or keep warm.
Yeah.
It's all about snow. It's about the average is about -8 in the winter, but it's also about grey. It's a palette of greys and blues in Denmark. This photo here, this is actually in the castle grounds. This was one of the grand alleyways that radiated from the palace, the Palace of Hirschholm, which no longer exists. It was demolished after the scandal of the Queen of Denmark having an affair and a child. With the unscrupulous Dr. Struensee. It was a great shame, and the palace, after the doctor was went on trial, it was completely erased. But these avenues with these ancient pollarded trees, which become very twisted and bitter sort of silhouettes in the wintertime, they still exist. So this photo before us now with the birds, and in the distance this cenotaph where a summer house used to stand. It was evocative. It's still there, the grandeur, but it's gone. And we also have the middle distance very nicely illustrated there. Oh yes, this is one of my favourites. This is also taken in the castle grounds. I have a little dog, so I'm always walking around. But this was amazing light. There's no filters on this. It was one evening we'd had some very icy weather, and the setting sun, it was golden hour. It captured these swans in this position, which to me was very much royal. They are the royal birds of Denmark, and even though the royals are no longer there, they're kind of served on this beautiful dish. I call it the golden salver, this picture. But of course in the book the image is in black and white, so you don't get the dazzling gold. But yeah, printing too much for that one. Yeah.
I'll take some of the other pictures and let you explain them a little bit later. What I have now is people from Denmark and from other places who have read the book, and they want to say a few words. And I don't know, I haven't rehearsed it. They might ask you a question as well. So from Denmark, I've got Archana. She is a writer herself. She writes in Hindi. She's also into literature. So I think you guys are acquainted. So I will also add Dr. Professor Sameer Kumar, who is a director from Queen's University, and Nuala. Both have read the book and they're also very impressed. They want to say a few words. So I will start with Archana, and I let her share her views about the book, and if she has anything to say to you, she can do that. You're welcome, Archana.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Yeah, I have been hearing Heather, and Despite reading her books, I had read her two books.
Okay.
And I got to know so much which I did not know earlier. Yeah. So I had read Heather's two books, Rice Pudding in Duet and Middle Distance. And both the books are different, very different, and
Mm.
unique in their own way.
Yep.
Rice pudding in a duet, it gives us so many, these recipes of so many dishes. So this I tried many recipes.
Very good.
Yeah, I tried many recipes. So this
Mm.
is the uniqueness of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And this book has total 31 yoga poses.
Mm.
So this book tells a lot about yoga.
Mm.
So I have prepared a little speech, I
That's
type.
fine. You're welcome to it. Go.
Steady.
I have come with my preparation.
That's good.
Yeah. So I will say about now today, since it is a talk about middle distance, I will focus on this book.
Yes, please.
The book says a lot about circumstances and relationships.
Yeah.
You know how relationships change when circumstances change.
Yeah.
This is the gist of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Circumstances play a huge role on our relationship. And if circumstances change, our relationships also change.
Mm.
And it was a great learning for me. It's a kind of sad book. I will
Mm.
say it's a kind of sad book.
Mm.
What I like the most about the book is that it is on the setting of Denmark, where I live, and India, my home country. So I could connect myself to both the countries through this book.
Yeah.
The book highlights yoga, meditation. I am a yoga lover.
Mm.
As I said, there are 31 yoga postures. And although it's a sad book, it has humor also in between.
Mm.
And humor I found, I will highlight, it is very difficult to talk all about 31 chapters. So I
Mm-hmm.
will highlight, some chapters
Please.
which has touched me especially.
Yeah.
Chapter 19 describes very vivid picture of India, road honking. And I know,
Okay.
the woman when she goes there and, when she's saying you on the road, people are honking. Even I'm Indian myself, but after having lived for 23 years in Denmark, when I go to India and people honk, oh my God, stop this. Why are you honking? Even I say, stop
Mm.
this. Why are you honking unnecessarily?
Mm.
Because in Denmark, honking means I had done some great mistake.
Mm.
Mm,
So that I laughed when I read this part of the book. I really laughed. It really made me laugh, Heather.
good.
The book also includes pictures of Denmark. This Heather was telling you, and I could identify those pictures, those places.
Very good.
And one phrase echoes in the novel, and I will read here. But who looks after you?
Yes. Yep.
No, but who looks after you?
Mm.
You know, the
Mm.
woman, she wants to say very much to her husband, you do, but
Mm.
she could not say because that is not true. So
Mm.
instead she says nobody does.
Mm.
So these small sentences, it tells a lot. It has deep meaning,
Yeah.
these small sentences. Then second thing, the book has history also. Caroline Matilda, who was wife of Christian seven monarchs of Kingdom of Denmark. So even I had read some history of Denmark, and I know Carolina Matilda, her husband was schizophrenic. So she started loving her sick husband, doctor. So finally they were divorced. The doctor was hanged. So the woman is comparing herself with the frustration of that, queen,
Mm.
Caroline Matilda. So that analogy is very good. The Heather, you have compared, the woman's frustration with that queen's frustration. We can understand what this Caroline Matilda was going through with her sick husband.
Mm.
among all the chapters, I found the last chapter, 31. It
Mhm.
was the most touching. When the protagonist, woman, when she returns back to her family
Mm.
from India to Denmark, and here she, because very very emotional when she meets her family again at the airport, and her three children are hugging her, kissing her, and her husband is standing,
Mm.
silently. That is very nicely explained. And the last two lines, the last two lines, I like the very much the last two lines of the book. Mummy, the little girl reached for the woman's arm, and they each buried themselves into the warmth and security of a maternal embrace.
Mm.
This was love. This was enough. That was the most touching line. Here, the way mother and daughter love is described, and I am also a mother of two girls, so I could relate myself to this. And it was, this was enough. This love, this was enough. One more thing I had discovered after reading this book, okay, irrespective of our culture, our backgrounds, human feelings are the same.
Very good.
The woman, what the expectations she has from her husband,
Mm.
every woman has,
Mm.
no matter what is your background, what is your culture. Our we may take different, different steps. We may take different decisions, but our feelings, our expectations are the same.
Mm.
So I congratulate to Heather again, writing such a nice book. My one question to Heather:
Hmm.
why woman has not been given a name?
Aha.
Why the woman has not been given?
Yeah, because it is says the woman. She does
Oh,
not have a name. Yes.
well, you do know me rather well. Uh,
Yeah.
we we worked at the same school for some
Yeah.
time. I was the art teacher, and Archana, the celebrated chemistry teacher. Um, a lot of it is based on real experience that I had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think writing should come from the heart and from experience. You should write about what you know, and sadly, in this sad book, a lot of the um, the events that happened, not the ghost ones, okay, but a lot of these events, they did come from my own experience. So I couldn't I couldn't put a name to her somehow. She just
Okay.
be her or she. It felt too hackneyed to call her Jane, or and yeah, and it is this is a sad book. It was a sad period, but it was dealt with by her through meditation, through yoga, through India, through getting back to the source of yoga, to understanding it through many more viewpoints in southern India than you can possibly imagine here in the West, where it's packaged and it's glossy, Vaseline, people kind of doing it just for exercise. There's no spiritual edge. So she, her, me, uh, I couldn't give myself a name. It was a work of it was a continuation of this difficult journey to actually write the book, to bring out the story. It was my therapy, and then published, and then other difficult things happen. But
Yeah.
this is the journey of life. And whereas this book, this happy little book full of recipes and
Yeah. 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 I'm saying both the books are very different. Actually, this that because the woman,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the woman has not been given any name, so that also makes the book unique. Because I haven't read, and because I read lots of fictions. I
Mhm.
read Spanish fiction and Chinese. I read, but this is the first book I had read where protagonist has no name.
Oh,
Yeah, this is the first book I read where protagonist has no name, like it's mentioned to her woman.
yeah.
Yes, Heather, looking forward to read your another book. What are you writing now?
Well, I'm afraid I have to earn some money. So and I have been working off and on, apart from being an art teacher. I've been working as a tour guide in Copenhagen. It's this history connection. So it's a guide to Copenhagen, and I've also created an app for visiting Copenhagen remotely. So there's social distancing, and it's with it's all about sustainability, about being good to our planet, and it's still yogic in that way, about giving back to Mother Nature. And after this awful 2020, beginning of 2021, I think we have to start caretaking our planet more. So I
Yeah.
decided, because the travel and tourism industry, they've been filthy in the past. So I think it's a it's been a terrible time, but it's a good time for changing our ways and being better.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful responses. Wonderful question. I wasn't really going to interrupt that, but I think we need to move on to
Yeah.
Dr. Professor Satish Ji and Nuala here in Belfast. So, what are your views? Oh, Nuala is going to speak first.
Okay.
Okay. So, Nuala, what did you find unique about the book? And you've got the author herself. So,
Thank you, Abhishek. And lovely to meet you, Heather. It was a pleasure reading the book. As I said, I stole it from my husband when he came in and he said, I have to do, I'm doing a little talk, a little review of this book. And I grabbed it and had a look at it. And what grabbed me initially was your little definition of equanimity in the first, because 2 days prior to that, I had been for an interview online for a position. And one of the questions was, Nuala, what do you hold most important in life? What do you think? So my answer was equanimity, to have equanimity in all things in life. Now, what I got from the book, and I did think it was semi-autobiographical, because something that was so felt so lived had to be something experienced for me. So I wondered if it was semi-autobiographical. For me, it was an analogy for everyone's journey to higher consciousness, to awareness. I get the impression, Heather, that you are an observer in life, that you are a witness, and that your part of your mission and your own coming into awareness and consciousness is born out of a lot of experience and a lot of engagement, whether it's Louis Vuitton or Never Full, or it's life in Denmark, whichever. And that's my approach to life as well, that our learning and the raising of our consciousness and awareness, it can only come through experience. So, your description of Lakshmi's birth through the being so buried in the depths of woundedness, we've been there. What the depths of woundedness feels like, and as a practicing Buddhist, the principle of Buddhism is that you grow like the lotus from the depth of woundedness into consciousness and in full bloom of full consciousness. So that analogy was constant. the sum of the parts of the book, you know, they're not, it's not greater than the individual parts. And each individual part, each pose, each yogic pose, the experience, each new insight are all the sum. So in order to see what you present as the sum, the reader has to experience each individual part as well. So as each chapter opened with a yoga pose, sort of there is a pause between chapters that the reader can and take, which I took, to think about what I had read and think about what the experience was, what the lesson was. And again, it's very much like the equanimity resonates with the Greek Stoic philosophers, you know, that our response to the external is what causes us anxiety, causes us depression, causes us problems. And that if we live in harmony with divine reason, then we have equanimity. We are neither overwhelmed or underwhelmed by the activities of life. But through the activities of life, we grow strong and we become wiser philosophers and observers. The contrast I absolutely loved and have lived, the contrast between Denmark and India. You know, the almost monotone description and climate of Denmark, liking it to Wilhelm Hammershøi's paintings, the starkness of snow and shadow, and then juxtaposing that with the shimmering haze of India and walking barefoot on dusty roads and the peacocks, the audacious color of India, you know, juxtaposed with that starkness. It was breathtaking. And because I live in Ireland and I've lived in the Northern Hemisphere most of my life, so I understand that huge, the difference and the transition and what it asks of you as a human being, to become acclimatized not only to your environment and the change of environments, but everything else that it brings personally, you know. I also, you know, the character, and by the way, the first book I wrote where the heroine was unnamed was the famous Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. She never named the new, you know, she never named her new, which again, I love, because I love the anonymity, because it makes it actually more relatable. You know, you're not, the only nod I think you gave to personalizing her was how she looked when she was in India, and how she always loathed the idea of being, you know, a nonconformist in a pack of nonconformers. You know, I would hate that. That would be my anathema as well. But you nodded to the fact that she had always short hair and she was always rather skinny and she had been a vegetarian. So this starkness and simplicity of life in India was not new to her. And she really didn't want to be painted with the brush of these Western middle-aged women who come over and they're all, you know, these nonconformers, cool hippies. So I really liked that. So I also found that perhaps this was my taking of her, of her haunting by Queen Catherine Matilda and her paramour, that perhaps I didn't know. So I'll ask you again, was that a reference to perhaps reincarnation? For me, and I said it with Satish, I wonder, you know, because within Buddhism, within yoga, within the principles and tenets, lies reincarnation and the lessons we learn and that we inherit karmically, and that perhaps she was walking in her own footprints, and that this time she had returned to have a different outcome. You know, it was just one little thing I wondered, that was she the reincarnation of Was she the reincarnation of Queen Matilda and her doctor being her paramour, that she overcame it and eventually did not need him to look after her anymore because she had ascended to a stronger place? So again, just the entire story really was, been a retracing of the scene of the crime that she had left before, and this was her full blooming into the lotus flower that she became when she returned from India, and she knew that all that she ever needed was in the arms of her family, and that it was just an analogy. And I did wonder if it was semi-autobiographical, because it was, it was too exquisite personally, and yet allowed the reader to become very detached and make up her own mind. It was really exquisite, Heather. It was absolutely, I loved it. And the photographs as well. You write I like to write. So you write very much in the same genre as I do myself, but I've never had the courage to publish it. Never had the courage to publish
this way.
So anyway, congratulations. I loved it. I sat and read it right from the moment I opened the first page right through to the last. So I loved it. So I really loved it. So it's a pleasure to know you and to be able to give you that feedback. So I don't know if any of this has resonated with you or not.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was absolutely glowing. And there's one thing that I forgot to mention with Abby about themes, and that is what you've just so fluidly picked up on, is about the image of the lotus flower, how it rises through the, its roots are in the dank, stinking leaves of 250 years of decay, and it's twisting through with carp and dirty water and debris, and then this exquisite flower. And this is the Buddhist idea. That's where I am as well.
Yes, yes.
I've been on many Vipassana retreats.
Yes,
and it's something that's totally. Well, it's opened my mind to forever. It's mystical.
The middle distance, the realm of the middle distance.
Yeah, which could equally be the twisted roots of the lily, all looking grim, and then as the chapters continue, a bud appears or a little shoot, and it's kind of rebirth, I guess.
Yes.
Flower, which I know is also very much, well, it's yoga, isn't it? It's all we can aim for, really.
So I know, Nola, you're wonderfully spoken, and you've got great in-depth. Read the book very well, and you've gone into the depths of the book. That's really good, and good to hear all of that. Dr. Satish, do you have any views? How has the book touched you, and how has it touched you?
Yes, thank you very much. In fact, I was thinking as Nula was speaking that within the Hindu philosophy, we have something called the Shiva Shakti, Shiva and Shakti. So when we look at the static energy and its combination, the manifestation of static energy into kinetic energy, that is where it comes from the Devis. So when I hear Nula, Archana, and Heather, it's the kinetic energy which is presented. And I'm going to try and make sense in my own analytical way to understand the perceptions and perspectives provided by Heather, but also covering some of the grounds that others have raised, but at the same time also trying to get some meaning out of the book. We both read the book, by the way, completely independent of each other. Because I was at work and Nola was able to read, and when I came back, she said, I finished reading. So today morning, I did the same. I was up in the pretty early up in my study, going through the book in one stretch and finished the reading, made my notes. So came back. So I said, we didn't discuss it, but you'll be finding a lot of commonalities, some common threads running through some of the ideas. So in a sense, I really enjoyed the book because the book presents some really interesting insights. And I think the most interesting part for me is that in my daily life, I'm used to very mundane books. If you're an academic, you're reading books for the purpose of very functional purposes. So when you have an opportunity to read something which is creative, it creates completely new perspective. It gives you a chance to shut some of the, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, the creative side and the analytical side. So here's an opportunity for me to look at the creative side as well. With those sort of a background, I just thought that I'll try and pick up that the journey that Heather made from Copenhagen to Bengaluru, and the sequencing is that very interesting. And I picked up, and I'm going to use some of the key ideas which were coming out of the book that really resonated from my perspective. The binding tale of samsara, and you start with samsara, the endless cycle of birth, not birth and death. In the Indian ethos, in the Hindu ethos, is a birth and rebirth. So it's very significant that birth and rebirth is far more intrinsic to a Hindu way of life, of an Indian way of life. And it's not death that dominates our life consciousness in the West. Okay, so there is this huge difference of samsara that we talk. So the idea is that, samsara controls who we are and what we do. And eventually everything that we do in this lifetime and future lifetimes are determined by that samsara. So thus the materiality of our life is determined and guided by samsara. So I find that really, really powerful tool to connect the West and the Eastern perspectives. And you have rightly brought in the Eastern perspective into the framework. So in a sense that when I look at the chapters and I see the barn owl, when you talk about the barn owl gliding through the night of fear, infused with a Nordic chill, and the idea that the sort of the visceral quality of that night, it really reaches out to your bones, and that in contrast to the extreme warmth that it's like saying you can't wear any more coats when you're in India. You have to go into bearing the bare minimum to keep yourself cool. And that idea, that contrast, I really loved it. I also enjoyed the looking at the chapters where you make a continuous reference, and I think quite in a couple of chapters you talk about the Anjali Mudra, particularly in terms of the state of awareness, the meditative state of awareness. Meditation, we always ask the question whether meditation comes before awareness or awareness comes as a result of meditation. Okay, and that is a question that is always there. How do I get awareness back into? How do I still my consciousness? Okay, that meditation as a form, and the asanas are primarily designed for that same purpose. So just as the sun, and I think that is a question that is also coming for you, that when you look at the sun becomes the greatest ally for reordering the seasons and also human existence. And it also helps us to reorder our mind. Okay, so the role of sun is really critical, that it helps to reorder our mind. And when we look at it, I asked the question, I wanted to see whether of course, you had the experience of the Surya, the sun in India, the Surya Namaskar as one of the poses and asanas of yoga. I was wondering, I didn't see that in the book. And I just wondered whether that's a part of it that you may like to explain. Definitely. So the idea again, and the other point that I wanted to raise from chapter 9, the prayer pose. And there's a beautiful section that you mention about casting a conscious eye around the terrain. She took the advice of her friend and purposely began to place a diminishing power back into the inverted cone-shaped form. Okay, you remember that section? And I pick on that because I really found that really fascinating. And I want to delve a bit about the explanation of that inverted cone-shaped that you're talking about. The inverted cone shape is very interesting perspective. As I said, and the idea that taking this argument that remembering to breathe as she stepped tentatively into her unconscious world. You mentioned that in the text as well. So all atoms and consequently all forms of matter in our environment are composed only of three major particles. proton, neutron, and electron. The proton and electrons are all stable particles, but the neutron can disintegrate simultaneously. So the Shiva Shakti that I mentioned before, the Shiva Shakti energy comes together as Shakti kinetic energy, creating a neutrino, okay, which is also a stable particle. So you can see that the kinetic energy of Shakti helps to convert the static energy of Shiva, thereby creating and raising the dormant Kundalini in one's life. So the chakras are activated as part of your yogic experience. And that is also part of the inverted cone argumentation that I'm trying to make. So the most virtuous, the dharma, the karma, and the satya all yield a transition from kama, artha to moksha. This is the true meaning of the inverted cone. That ultimate is acquiring that level of moksha or nirvana, which you add at the end of the chapter, the end of the book, you bring that perspective into it. So the kinetic effects are very important. And I think that is part of the Shakti, the Devi effect, the female energy effect, that the kinetic energies include the effects of wisdom, the effects of wellness, and the effects of wealth. So you have Saraswati, Parvati, and Lakshmi, which you end with at the end of it, which is wellness side of it. So again, it is really, really fascinating to see how that inverted cone can be expressed in the perspective that you provided. So in a way, when you say that when the neurons kicked in, then knowledge was something that the people in India didn't have to look and cultivate. It came organically to them. All the neurons were kicked. So it came organically. So when the poorest of the poor or the richest of the person, they had that organic knowledge, which we didn't have to cultivate because the neurons were activated. So yoga became an integral part to help us activate that neuron, which are completely dormant otherwise. So I found that really an interesting. So again, how to avoid samsara? How to avoid samsara is a big question. And that is only through cultivating karuna or compassion. Compassion, only by breaking down the walls of prejudgment can we achieve compassion. Okay, so that again, it's very different from pity. And I think in the arguments that you provide, in the chapters that you provide, that compassion really comes through. The conflict, the disjuncture, the struggle between compassion and pity comes through. So I just thought those were some really interesting side of it. The water lily, Nola has already picked up the idea of lotus. Again, lotus is flowers and seeds at the same time. So it, again, is a reflection of our karma, the flowering and seeding, the cause and effect energy, but also the fact that the lotus can be manifested in the most dirtiest of the ponds. Again, within the dirt of one's life, one can manifest the true Buddha nature, the true lotus of our life. So again, really, really beautiful. And I think from the whole idea that, ultimately when you talk about the epiphany of meeting or encountering Lakshmi, that is, I thought was really beautiful. The role of aspiring for complete freedom as a human spirit is reiterated, especially loosening the grip and boundaries of one's ego. I think that is really crucial, because as part of the yogic practice, loosening the boundaries of our own ego becomes so important. So India calmed the inner spirits of this protagonist only by unconditionally accepting, letting go of the clatter and distraction. Such a freedom from the cycle of birth and death, cycle of birth and rebirth, are the essential message. Accepting change is the unchangeable essence of Bharat or India. Thank you very much for the book. Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. So much that you've said. I can't even begin to respond other than with a thank you, and a thank you to India for what it gave me with its this openness about spirituality. It was such a relief to come from the West, to have the pressure of drink, the pressure of meat, the pressure of appearing different because you wanted to worship in some way. That was the organicness of India for me, that everybody did it in this little village by the ashram at night. The electricity would well, it wouldn't last very long anyway, but and it would pump the water for about 2 hours a day. But as the sun set, then people would just light a candle, candles, place them in their little shrines and worship, and then go to sleep. It was so in tune with the world, with Mother Earth, with how it should be, and how we've become so disassociated, I think, in the West. Unless you look for it and look for it within, which we can. We carry it with us because we are organic, we are interlinked.
Wonderful, wonderful, Heather. I wanted to point out one more thing is that, the yoga is also inspired by nature. So everything like lotus pose, and there's different mudras from different animals, and your photography is also inspired by nature. So I saw that there was a commonality there as well. That your photography and yoga both kind of go back to the nature, and in the end, you went back to the nature as well, because you said, "Oh, who looks after me?" And nobody does. But in the end, you said the cosmos is looking after you. So I think we come from nature, and if we go back to nature, that's what the whole story, I think, is about finding your own equilibrium, finding your equanimity, as Nuala said.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful theme, wonderful book. Time is kind of giving me a nudge. We are we are coming to the end of the program. I just want to mention two more things which are very important to the whole yoga and yogic life. You mentioned santosha. So santosha is the essence of yogic life. If you are not santoshi, if you're not content with what you've got, I think you'll not be at peace. So that's very important. You mentioned that you covered that. And the second one is the mauna, which means not talking, right? Talking within. So if you can talk within yourself, only then you can discover yourself. And there's a really good story, and I think Professor Satish would know. There's a story about Krishna being a small child, right? And then he's eaten some earth, some soil, and the mother comes in and looking and says, "Open your mouth. I want to see." He says, "No, I haven't eaten anything." And the mother says, "Show me your mouth." And when he opens his mouth, what she sees scares her because she sees the whole universe in his mouth. The meaning of that story is that the universe is within you, and you just need to get in touch with that universe to identify your true self. Now, the yoga word itself means addition. So, in a way, adding your soul to that divine or to the cosmos is what yoga is about. It's a passage, it's a way, it's a mechanism to find your inner universe, basically. And then you'll be at. One thing I do, there is two things I want to mention, which I think, right, um, I don't agree with. Unfortunately, I don't agree with. Is that one thing is said about India is that she was vast, wise, and old. So I don't like the word old. I think India is a very young country. So not in a different. I know what you're saying. You're talking about the old traditions. Yeah.
2,500 years of Hindu yogic tradition. Yeah, that's years, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not young.
It's
so old.
ancient.
It's
I
ancient.
agree with Heather.
Yeah.
Indian civilization is very old. Only thing it has young people, population wise.
Yes. Population wise.
Otherwise, civilization wise, it's very old.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the second thing, right, which I think that could have made things a little bit different is that when she finds herself, right, and when she has discovered herself and she's find the light, the pictures and the theme should also be colored in the end.
Well,
Right? It goes from black and white to color.
I
No.
can't publish. I
Nuala
couldn't
doesn't agree.
manipulate the images for that.
Nuala doesn't agree. Nuala doesn't agree.
Yeah. if that image of the swan on the golden salver could have been,
Okay.
it was just way beyond the Amazon printing, that one. But maybe that's a future project.
That's absolutely. And you know who to go to now. You've got Nuala and you've got Professor Satish and you've got Archana for any advice on India. They're experts.
Oh, no.
Well, and I think we should get Nuala's book out of her, shouldn't we, Archie?
You know something, through this book, actually, I had read this book 2-3 years ago. So I had to revisit this book, to speak about it.
Yeah.
I am from India, but I got to know about India so much through this book, which I did not know.
Mm.
So sometimes, we don't know everything about our own country.
Mm.
So, Jenny from Facebook is saying found answers to some questions about yoga and the universe. Wonderful comment.
Hello, Jenny.
Hello, Jenny.
And just to say that my plan when we can all travel again is to go back to India. The ashram yoga school that I went to, it's called Srimat Yoga, just outside of Bengaluru, and it's wonderful. And I will be going back to for a few months and then continue around the world and write.
Yes.
YouTube, I think.
We will meet up halfway around, perhaps, Heather. I've joined your Facebook page, so I would like to stay in touch with you.
Right.
Okay. It would be wonderful if we could meet up in India also and sit and while away the hours discussing life and looking into the middle distance together.
Under the banyan tree.
Yes.
Perfect. Anything better. And Archie as well.
That's a wonderful place where we can close the gathering.
Yes.
It was wonderful listening to you, Heather, and to everyone in the program who joined. Many thanks to you, Archana. Many thanks to Satish.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes.
I hope
Thank
you
you.
continue on this.
Congratulations again, Heather.
Yeah.
Abhi, one thing, I am curious about Professor M. Satish Kumar because my husband is also from academic background. Like he's a scientist. I will just listen. If he can, he is also he works here in a research institute.
Okay.
Well,
Did you with Heather's husband?
yeah.
My husband, yes. Please come. So if it is okay, Satish, means you are from which